SoCal Connected is made possible through the generous support of the Amundsen Foundation, serving the Los Angeles community since 1952.
On tonight's SoCal Connected. It was the 90s.
He was one of the top guys.
He had speed.
Just great ball handling.
Talent.
Carrion with the touchdown.
He made headlines as one of the top high school football players in the nation.
You just put him out there and let him do his thing, and something magical would take place.
And then
something was really wrong.
He just disappeared.
Looked like he was lost or something, you know?
Now, he's part of a bigger story.
Everything was fabulous until he stopped taking the medication and we see the outcome.
What happened to Dorsey High's Antonio Carrion?
Not knowing where he was for 2 years was the hardest. I had no idea where to look. I just drove any and everywhere. I don't care if he is a man, he's still my child. And he's always going to be my child. In my eyes, he'll always be a star. It wasn't supposed to happen like this.
He was a phenomenal, naturally gifted athlete.
He was fast as a bullet.
He had a gift.
It was amazing just to see him play.
He had a lot of athletic ability.
With that hair just swinging around.
Yeah, he had some long locks.
Very popular with the women.
He ranks up there. He's right up there, the greatest.
He's one of the most gifted athletes that I've ever been able to coach.
For Paul Knox to call Antonio Carrion one of his most gifted athletes says something. In his 29 years as head coach of LA's Dorsey High, he led the Dons to 4 city championships, and 29 of his players went on to play in the NFL. His players called him Pops. 1991 was his 5th season as head coach, and his first year with number 6, Antonio Carrion.
He was our best wide receiver, went to a championship, and he's a big-time contributor to our team.
He was one of the top guys in the 90s.
High school football in the 90s was like Friday Night Lights, and the Dons were the kings of the field. They churned out championships and stars. And Antonio Carrion was making headlines.
He was just the type of person, you just put him out there and let him do his thing, and something magical was going to take place.
I just think when I get the ball, I'm a scorer all the time. Any play I get the ball, I think I'm a scorer. That's the type of person I am.
I think that football was like a healthy distraction to what was going on in his home.
Antonio and his father and mother shared a room until she went away.
I went to prison when I was 24 years old. Antonio was, I believe, 9, and I think Danielle was 4. Bank robbery, forgery, and fraud. And I was given a 24-year sentence. Antonio's father was strung out on drugs. He was not a father. The worst thing in my life, being away from my children. I missed their entire life. One time when I was in Lexington, Kentucky prison, and me and all my friends were around the television watching Antonio. And that was the first time I got to see my son actually run down the field.
Fake the Benbow. Carrion with the touchdown.
Just another Friday night for Antonio Carrion.
These games on Friday nights was something where you wanted to be. There's a DJ, LA Dream Team, who had famous songs. He would be here. I mean, it was like a party here on the field. You know, it was a good 2.5, 3 hours of fun, excitement, talented players. We had Carson, Banning, San Pedro, Dorsey, Crenshaw.
And Antonio played for not just one, but 2 high schools, bitter rivals, just 3 miles apart. First, basketball at Crenshaw, then football at Dorsey. He loved both sports.
Got on my basketball jersey and my shorts. So it's still in me. I think about it, but I like football better. I really do.
They get him. Fumble. The ball is loose. A big play from the Crenshaw defense. They blitzed him from the blind side, hit the corner.
His coaches remember him fondly to this day.
This is our coach's office, and if you look at that plaque right there, he's one of only 2 athletes that have received that honor.
In his junior year, he led the Dorsey Dons to a near undefeated season, beating the #1 ranked Banning High in an epic showdown.
The Dorsey Dons, they're going to become the 1991 4A Los Angeles City champions.
Oh, we wouldn't have won the game without Antonio.
His Dorsey High football coach, Irvin Davis, can recount the play-by-plays from memory.
Rivalry, 1992, Antonio catches a touchdown. He runs back down the sideline towards the Crenshaw team and spectators because they had been antagonizing him all week long. So when he made that play, first play of the game, it was very symbolic. And I can remember that moment like it was yesterday.
But just getting to the football field came with risk.
A lot of kids had issues. It could be tough. It could be tough going from community to community, gang territory to gang territory, where you could eventually get in some problems if somebody perceived you as being involved in that kind of activity.
Back in the 90s, LA streets were notorious nationwide for gang activity.
Everybody get a gun. Whoever got a gun can go.
It was a toxic mixture of real crime and media hype. It was all over the TV. Antonio himself was hardly immune to the allure of local street gangs.
Antonio actually tried to join the Crips, and they wouldn't let him.
The older guys in the area, they wouldn't allow him to get involved because they knew he had potential. They knew he was a star.
They told him that he was their star, and if he can get out of the hood, they were not getting ready to mess up his life.
Gang members respect that, and so they've always been big supporters of the football program here.
But a star player like Antonio put a positive light on the school and the larger community.
This whole South LA thing, I think, is overblown, and we have to get out of that way of thinking that, you know, oh, it's a South LA, we expect it to be gang members and drug dealers. No, there's a lot of these young men that are doing a lot of positive things.
Antonio's whole outlook was positive.
The football games, all that comes easy. That's just natural talent.
He was at the top of his game.
They had him pegged to be like the next Jerry Rice or something.
He was one of the best players in his position in the country, and the national media took notice. First, ESPN.
You're just about ready to meet Antonio Carrion, one of the top wide receivers in the country.
Then, Sports Illustrated.
I remember when I first saw him on, what's that magazine? Sports Illustrated. I said, boy, look at Antonio. Look at Antonio. Yeah, we were so proud of him.
High school football player on Sports Illustrated. Wow, you know, wow.
That let everybody know that he was a nationally ranked player and he was going to be highly recruited.
Now, with the national spotlight on him, it was a given Antonio would have a place on the coach's unofficial wall of fame. He accepted an offer from San Diego State, but he never enrolled.
We knew that there were issues that he was dealing with when he went home and issues that when he left school that he had to deal with.
With both parents absent, Antonio was living with his grandmother. Of his immediate family, all that remained was his sister.
One day, I just happened to call from the prison that I was in up north, At the time, my daughter was 14 years old, and she said, "Mommy, something's wrong. When I get up, my spine hurts really, really bad." It took them 2.5 months to find out what was wrong with her because her cancer was very rare. And 10 days before her 15th birthday, she passed.
Stephanie was allowed to leave prison to see her daughter one last time.
We were at my grandma's house in her room, and she choked to death on her fluid. I mean, we all suffered, but with it being his sister, it hit him more.
He was out of it, I tell you. He was really out of it.
He abandoned football. His family didn't realize it, but his mind was unraveling. He was just 18.
There was times where I would see him going down Crenshaw, and he used to be walking those islands, just talking, like just walking, looked like he was lost or something, you know?
10 years went by, and in 2002, Stephanie came home clean and sober.
The very first time I noticed that something was really wrong is when he was walking around in the backyard in circles with a cell phone that I knew for a fact did not work. And he was talking on the cell phone. And then he would listen as if somebody was talking to him back, and then he would talk some more. And I asked him who he was talking to, and he said not to disturb him right then because he was on an important phone call getting ready to get an NFL contract.
He hadn't been on the football field in 11 years. Concussion, Stephanie soon learned, had nothing to do with his odd behavior.
He was diagnosed bipolar paranoid schizophrenic and was given medication that he started taking in the beginning, but he stopped.
The local football star eventually landed on Skid Row. That's when Stephanie began roaming the streets at night in search of her son.
While my husband was asleep and not knowing I was gone, I would take my jewelry off and just drive. I just drive and pray that And one day I did, as he was reaching into a garbage can. Yeah, that's a sight for a mother to see.
Their relationship consists of a minute or two, here and there. Antonio calls, and Stephanie heads out to meet him, hoping he won't slip away before she gets there.
Big Mama! Big Mama! Hey, you seen Tonio? He called me last night, told me to meet him.
He roams around downtown Los Angeles amongst thousands of other homeless people. Finding him isn't easy. Today, Stephanie spots him near Union Station. She brings him some food, clothes, supplies, a little cash, and tries to communicate with him the best she can. A few minutes together, and then it's over, and he disappears again.
Once he gets whatever little goodies I'm bringing him, he dismisses me.
A month later, they meet again.
I honestly feel in my heart that I will bury my son before I bury myself, just like my daughter. That's what I feel in my heart.
I never had an idea of him having any mental issues. It wasn't until much later that that kind of was brought to me, and then I kind of started piecing some things together that saying, oh, okay, now maybe this is why this happened, or this is how he did certain things, but at the time, I didn't see it.
4 years ago, Knox got an unexpected call. Antonio needed his help. The coach hadn't seen him in 15 years.
I said, okay, Antonio, come see me and we'll sit down and talk. And when I saw him, I mean, he looked disheveled and kind of homeless.
Knox became his benefactor, but when the disability check stopped coming, Antonio stopped calling. Knox hasn't seen him since. The story of Antonio Carrion is about the tragedy of a local football star, but it's also about a local, even national disgrace. The streets of LA are home to nearly 19,000 mentally ill people, This misery traces back to the early 1960s. That's when California closed most state psychiatric hospitals and did away with forced medications with promises to open outpatient facilities to fill the gap. But those promises weren't kept, and the hospital doors stayed closed.
We closed these places down. We left people to just fend for themselves. And in my opinion, the neglect by us as a society is really what has caused this issue to happen.
There are not enough psych beds in California. Right now, LA County needs 5,000 to meet the recommended minimum. It has 2,300.
We have 26 counties in California that have no beds at all. If you don't provide treatment to somebody, then they can't get well. If people can't get the care they need, then they're going to act out. And if they act out, chances are they're going to come to the attention of law enforcement. Hence, they pick up a case, and now they're in jail. A lot of people are in jail for quality of life offenses, urinating in public, trespassing, sometimes petty theft. You know, they're hungry, they steal something out of the 7-Eleven.
And many end up here, the mental health ward of LA Men's Central Jail.
In the Los Angeles County Jail, this is the largest mental health ward in the country. There are approximately 19,000 inmates here, so 4,000 of them have been diagnosed with a serious mental illness and are receiving treatment for it. So it's a huge problem.
In fact, Antonio was here the day SoCal Connected was filming. Requests to speak to him were denied. He landed here after being arrested in January of 2018 for assault with a deadly weapon. He allegedly assaulted 2 men with a cane. He told his mother he was high on drugs and remembers nothing. Antonio was deemed incompetent to stand trial.
The jailing of inmates who have a mental illness is inefficient, inhumane, and ineffective. And keeping them in jail for the purposes of treatment and punishing them for being sick is, in my opinion, inhumane, and it isn't what prosecutors signed up to do.
I think there's some group therapy going on, so there's actually...
Los Angeles County, at least, is putting real effort into solving the problem.
I think Los Angeles County is one of the places that's leading the nation.
District Attorney Lacey is spearheading a push to boost training for law enforcement officers and programs to divert mentally ill people from jail to treatment and to help them find housing and other services.
When you successfully divert people who have a mental illness, you do it the right way. The recidivism rate, which before was in the 70% or greater, drops to about 20%.
Antonio has been arrested 43 times, usually resulting in jail time. By SoCal Connected's estimate, he's $1 million inmate. That's his overall cost to the criminal justice system. Norca Regalado runs a string of sober living facilities. Antonio has been here 5 times.
The first time he came to me, he was taking his medication and everything was fabulous until the moment that he found out that he didn't have to if he didn't want to. Then he stopped taking the medication and we see the outcome.
Back on the streets until the next confrontation.
Taxpayers paying millions of dollars for somebody like Antonio to go to jail, to see the judge, overcrowded jails, social workers, therapists, psychiatrists, parole department, probation department, the police department, emergency pet team to come and assess the situation. All that for really nothing, because at the end he always ends up committing a crime, back to jail, and here we go, another $1 million, because that's the process. Definitely it's not working.
Inmates here at the mental unit cost $650 a day versus $157 for those in general population. And because of a vicious cycle, their stays are longer.
You'll see them arrested for a lot of lower level crimes, such as resisting arrest or a minor drug charge, and they might serve 3 times the time you would see an inmate for an identical charge.
That seems to be what happened to Antonio in 2012. Court records show he walked up to a cashier at a McDonald's, demanded money, then got in line to order food, completely unaware he had just tried to rob the place. He was charged with armed robbery and sent to state prison for 16 months. Lacey reviewed Antonio's case at SoCal Connected's request.
I look at his case and I think it's tragic because he's a young man who had a great start in life, in my opinion. He was a high school football star, but suddenly his life got derailed and by mental illness, and there doesn't seem to be very much chance of him getting help other than through the jail or the criminal justice system.
There are more mentally ill people behind bars than are in psychiatric hospitals. Jails have become de facto mental institutions. Even places like Twin Towers, which has dedicated mental units, are a far cry from a hospital. Melissa Pitts Cutler spent over 25 years as a parole agent in Los Angeles County.
Walking in a prison is a certain feel and structure. When you walk into a prison, it makes you go like this. So you're taking a person who's fearful of everything around them and putting them in that environment.
You can't recover in a correctional facility. You're just not going to get better in a loud, noisy, overcrowded environment.
When they come out, if they were mentally ill on a scale of 1 to 10 at a 6, when they come out of prison, they're all the way at a 10.
In 2013, Antonio got out of prison again. He landed in Pitts Cutler's office.
It took probably about 30 seconds for me to see that Antonio was actively psychotic. When we asked him about his medication, he didn't want to take medication. He and that's so typical. Most mentally ill patients, they don't like their meds.
Unlike most people in this situation, Antonio had someone by his side, his mother.
She was very open about the fact that she was a felon, that she had a criminal history, that she had been to prison. Honestly, at first we were like, oh gosh, here we go. But then as she continued to talk, we realized, oh my gosh, this lady is really our ally. And she had so much knowledge about the system and how it had failed her son.
Back at Men's Central Jail, Antonio continues to be held for allegedly assaulting 2 men with a cane. His mother believes he's mentally ill and shouldn't be prosecuted.
What I am hoping for is to have my son placed in an institution on medication where he can see that he can live an active, productive life. That's all I want.
Her goal is a long shot. She must convince a judge that Antonio deserves to go to one of 6 state psychiatric hospitals in California. Getting a spot is nearly impossible. So she secretly records Antonio, hoping to prove he qualifies.
Oh, Father, tell me, do we get what we deserve? Oh, we get what we deserve.
All us moms want, I don't care if your kid is 5 or 50, we just want our children to be safe and happy. For Stephanie, I guarantee you, especially since she was in prison, she probably never slept a single night peacefully while Antonio was in prison. Just, I'm a mom, and I know what that would feel like.
You don't leave them, you fight. As long as I'm getting my child the help that he needs, I'm gonna do everything possible that I can do.
In California, the reform of the mental health system moved slowly.
It's probably going to take a decade in LA County for us to really see things turn around.
For her part, Stephanie counts progress in its smallest increments. Gathering evidence, attending hearings, giving testimony.
I know my son will never be well. I know my son will never be our so-called sane. I know my son will always have a disability, but I know that disability can be controlled. All I want is for my son to have the best life he can have.
In April, Stephanie went to a crucial court hearing.
I said, Your Honor, I beg you, please help me help my son. My son doesn't need to go to another jail. He's in a jail. My son needs to go to a hospital. Please agree with me to send my son to the hospital. I said, "Thank you, Your Honor." And I sat down.
In a rare move, the judge granted Stephanie's request. Antonio would be transferred to a locked, state-run psychiatric hospital.
Today, I am filled with gratitude. I have fought for almost 9 years to get my son help, to get him off the street, sleeping on the street, eating off the ground. And today, I finally got that victory.
And where down we go, so where down we go, way down we go. Oh, you let your feet run wild. Time has come as we all